Hello everyone, thank you for coming out to today's presentation on effective collaboration. My name is Jose Socorro. I'm with the Young Businessmen of Tulsa and I serve as Director of Communications. Today we're going to talk about collaboration, what healthy collaboration looks like, and we're going to look a little more deeper into some of the working environments and the habits that are created in certain workplace and cultures and better approaches and practices. But before we get started, we're going to do a little meet and greet. We're going to ask some questions, trying to get a little acquainted. So the first question is, has anyone ever done the trust fall? All right. Anybody willing to share about their experience with doing the trust fall? Well, I'll go ahead first. So back in 2011, I was working at a camp in Southwest Missouri, and I was camp counselor for a group of 7th grade boys. And one of the obstacle course projects had me go over the wall, and then when you got past the wall, you were probably elevated about 10 feet over, and so I had to depend on a group of 7th grade boys to basically catch me when I fell down. I didn't really like my chances, I'm going to be honest with you, just because they're not very strong. But the whole purpose of the course was to build trust and a good cohesion with the other people in the group. So I ended up falling, and I'm alive to tell you about it, that it went pretty well. It is pretty hard, though, to kind of put your trust in something like that when you don't really know the person or you don't really trust in their ability to rely on their support. So the next question I have is, does anyone have a sports team and why?
Baltimore Orioles.
And why is that?
Just as a kid, I grew up with Brooks Robinson and Palmer and have loved them ever since.
Pretty good. I'm actually an East Coast guy, and a few summers ago I actually went to a Baltimore Orioles game. And my favorite teams, being from the East Coast, I'm a big Mets fan, big Knicks fan, New York Rangers, New York Giants. And even in the presentation later on, I'm actually going to mention one of the teams there and my reasoning for it as well. Does anybody else have a favorite sports team? Yes, or no?
Chicago Bulls.
The Bulls?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Everybody's that.
Well, why do you like the Bulls? Basketball? Yeah.
Basketball. Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan? Yeah, he's pretty good. And in the presentation, surprisingly, I will actually talk about Michael Jordan and just kind of the example that he set when he played. And there's a lot that we can learn from the Bulls when it comes to collaborating effectively, and so on and so forth. So my third question is, do you have a fun family or school project that you worked on? Anything you want to share? I mean, I can tell you moving's always a fun project because you got to plan the moving unit guys. How many boxes do I have to move certain things? What do I got to get rid of? What do I got to buy? Do I hire a moving company, or do I save money and just get those in-laws or those family members that owe me a favor? So it's always pretty interesting. I tell you, I just recently moved someone, and it was not fun. I mean, they moved in from a house to an apartment. I thought I was moving a house to another house. But it's pretty interesting, though, needless to say, the experience in working on a family project. Anybody have anything they want to share or add? All right, silent crowd, no problem. Okay, so my last question to kind of break the ice is, has anybody ever seen that game-winning shot in the Space Jam movie? You have? All right, most of us have? All right, well, I'm going to show it to you again anyway. And in here, you're going to see collaboration and interaction with the characters and the team. So if you see a commercial, they do not sponsor the presentation by any far stretch.
Instead of produced.
Check time.
Oh, that was pretty cool. Okay. Now, the pretty interesting about the video was that you had various people involved in the action. Now, in the beginning of the movie, the Looney Tunes are trying to salvage everything they have because they're going to be taken over by these monsters. And so somehow they get Michael Jordan. Hold on a sec here. We're having a little trouble here. Let's see. All right. Well, we'll get that later. But anyhow. Oh, here we go. All right. Here we go. So what not to do at a presentation is make sure you have everything well organized. On what? I didn't? Okay. Oh, I did the volume, so should be fine. Okay. Here we go. So the whole thing there is they needed help. They found someone, and that someone took a while for them to work and get together. So what they did was they practiced. Michael Jordan realized nobody played sports, nobody played basketball, so he had to retrain them. And the Looney Tunes had to basically be very patient and do their part to be able to be prepared for the big game. And so the whole thing is it was a process. It took a lot of patience from the leader, and it took faith from the leader to incorporate that into others, to trust them, to get them the opportunity to win, because they were the only option they had. And so a lot of times we're in groups, we've been in groups or in teams where the leader doesn't instill a lot of trust in his people and takes on the responsibility of everything. And he's not really working smart, he's working hard. And there's that whole 80-20 rule now where you see the leader not trusting his team, training them and equipping them. So what the presentation is going to tackle is how leaders can effectively entrust and empower their members while at the same time holding the members accountable for their commitment and responsibility in the group and organization. So a little bit about my story. So when I was in college, I was involved in a couple of groups, and I had the opportunity of leading them. And in my experiences, the one thing I learned was that I had to, number one, trust and support those around me, that I couldn't do everything. I had a professor that made it a priority to make sure that I spread the ball around and entrusted other people. That just because I'm the leader doesn't mean that my word is the final say. I have to be willing to be open, and I have to be willing to make changes and adjustments as I go in the process. Now, for a young guy to learn that can be a little difficult, especially as hard-headed as I am at times. It took me a little while. But the beautiful thing about it is my professor kind of walked me through the process, and sometimes I would step back and watch things happen. And it's amazing when you give people an opportunity that they start showing you all these abilities and all these things they can do. And all it took was for me to just allow them to take part in a role and allow them to use their strengths. And that's a big thing sometimes lacking in group efforts. It's empowering others and seeing the potential in what they have. And then in college, I was a part of a business group. Now, when I went to college, I was a Bible major turned business major. So you can say I almost backslid, but I didn't. I got saved by grace just in time. And so what I learned about that business project was if you're willing and able, the right people around you will help you get to where you need to go. And so in this business project, I was able to partner with other students and come up with projects and plans and initiatives to make an impact in other countries. My sophomore year, I was part of a project with Campbell Soup in conjunction with a nonprofit student business organization. And one of my colleagues, she was able to write an entire presentation and booklet in Spanish and go over to Guatemala and teach hundreds of people how to grow sustainable gardens. And they were able to go on the TV and reach over 27 million people and teach them how to be sustainable. And we were in partnership with Teen Challenge in Guatemala. So what I learned there was that I don't have to do everything, and sometimes you just have to trust the coach and work with him. And sometimes that can be hard, trusting the coach and the leader to get things done and accomplished. And so right now where I am in life, I've learned that you can always input and give what you have, but you also have to be open and willing to listen to others and kind of change and make some plans. So we're going to take a quick break from our media timeout, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit about the case study in which the presentation is based around on. Thank you. Welcome back from our break. In case you missed it, we're enjoying some pizza and water. So for those watching, sorry you couldn't have any. Now I'm going to talk about the organization I'm a part of, the Young Businessmen of Tulsa. And if you look in your training manuals, I have a little more information in the manuals as opposed to on the PowerPoint. And so the YBT has given me an opportunity for about over a year now to take part in their communications and public relations responsibilities and roles. And through that effort, I've learned about a lot, I should say, about teamwork, working with others, sometimes even going above and beyond my responsibilities and tasks to make sure we get things done, whether that's setting up for the luncheons early in the morning, getting the banners, or after the luncheons, tearing down the banners, or going out and doing speaking engagements, or haunting the news outlets in town to get them to cover a story, which I'm still working on, and when I do accomplish it, you will know. Excuse me. Anyhow, this organization has given me a lot of opportunity to grow as a professional, to learn a lot about teamwork, and also to contribute and fill in where there may be any gaps for space. Now, moving on to the case study. So has anyone ever read the Harvard Business Review or heard of Harvard University? Okay. So the Harvard Business Review, that was a funny question, wasn't it? Yeah. Is a business publication with great information. They cover all kinds of topics, from finances to best HR practices to teamwork and anything possible related to business, marketing, entrepreneurship, you name it, they got it. And the reason I chose this case study is because it gave great information and perspective on successful collaborative teams. The individuals that wrote the articles, which their names you'll also see on the PowerPoint and on the training manual, they basically were granted to do a case study on 55 teams from all across the world. And in their case study, they kind of analyzed the behaviors of executives, from the behavior to leaders and to the actual employees. A quick fun fact that I read not only in the beginning of the case study, but at the end, they talked about BBC, which is a big communications company based out in Europe. Is that when they do the Olympics and when they do big events, they don't hire, they do hire outside contractors, but they're not people that actually work for the company. And an example that I can share with you is I have a friend who works at NBC, and I remember about 2 years ago, he asked me, hey, did you want to go work in the Olympics? And I was like, well, that's a really good opportunity, but I don't think that's a good idea for me because I don't know where I will be. And so that was kind of interesting because you think when you watch the Olympics, which are on right now, they're on TV, they have so many fun things going on, the camera angles, the news reporters, the PR, the marketing team, and everybody involved to give you that production. You would think that NBC hired them out. But instead, it takes a group of independent workers, from analysts to finance specialists to makeup artists to people that give you the good food, people to book the hotels, to make an event like that possible. And that's given a great example of what collaboration looks like effectively. Because although there may be some issues currently right now with the Olympics and the venue, they're still able to get by with the necessary team and resources. And so on the training manuals, I encourage you to kind of browse a little bit through the information there. When I downloaded the actual information, it was about 23 pages, so I kind of consolidated it down to give you a brief overview. And I do encourage you, after the presentation, to check out the actual article, and I can actually email you the information as well. So now we're moving along to the successes in effective collaboration. In your training manuals, I should say, you'll have about 2 pages with pictures of sports teams that, in my research, have demonstrated the results of good teamwork and of everyone, the one team, one all concept and philosophy. I'm going to actually play another basketball video, quite a bit of a shock to all I know. In this instance, you're going to see something a little different here. Michael Jordan isn't going to take the game-winning shot. He's actually going to do something that not many superstars normally do, which is give the ball to someone else or trust somebody. Now, the Chicago Bulls have won about roughly 4 to 5 championships in the 90s, roughly. And what's interesting is, how do you win so many championships? Is it one person? Most people could say it's Michael Jordan. The truth is, it took about 11 guys and the head coach to get them to all work and play together. Now, the Bulls teams that won the championships, you had your players that were just defensive players. You had your players that kind of had Michael Jordan abilities, but they weren't always going to be Michael Jordan. And then you had the players, which is all of them, accepted their responsibilities because the big goal was to win a championship, as is the goal for any sports teams. But what you learn from being sports fans or watching sports, sometimes that isn't always the case. You have agendas, whether it's the coaches, whether it's the players, whether it's front office saying, hey, this is what I want, this is what I want to do. And a lot of times you'll see teams that they will lose a lot of games. You're wondering, these guys are getting paid $500,000. They're supposed to be the best of the best. Why are they losing? And so the truth is, there's a couple factors. Number one, it's the attitude and the perception of management. The second is the coaching staff, how well they handle personalities and attitudes. And third is going to be the players. Unfortunately, in today's sports culture, some of the players control more than they should or have more input and say into what actual organizations do, which should not be the case. It's like having, some of us are parents, some of us are not. For those who are parents, or if you are in a job where you tell people what to do, you wouldn't want your subordinate telling you, hey, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to do it. And even they can have an opinion, but I don't think you would be welcoming if they wanted you to change everything about how you do things, because number one, that's your job. Number two, they help you accomplish the goals and tasks at hand. And third, it creates for a very nasty work environment, and it makes the communication amongst the subordinates overall and the leadership pretty difficult. So I'm going to play another video with the hopes that I actually know this time to do everything to hit the mute and the unmute. Okay, here we go. Kick back, and let me take you back to 1997. And here we go.
Earlier in the series, Stockton had double-teamed and stolen the ball in a similar situation, and they beat us. So he thought about that and realized Stockton would probably come off of me, and he just wanted me to know that I had to be ready. He comes off, I'll be ready. And I just decided right then, if I get it, I'm just going to let it fly.
It is Michael Jordan time. Michael, 6 seconds, 5. Michael in traffic to Curl, 15 first.
Hitting the big shot at 97 is my most memorable moment.
See, I did it right this time. I hit the mute. All right. All right. Now, and we're going to hit the play button. Okay. Now, a couple things about the video. Number one, there's other videos on YouTube that will actually bring back the moment and we'll go further detail into the game. And even the broadcasters and anybody who's watched basketball in the 90s can tell you that if it's like the last 20 seconds of the game and the Bulls need to win, Michael Jordan's getting the ball. Well, Michael did not get the ball. Well, he did get the ball, but he passed it away. See, a lot of times people were expecting Michael to hit the big shot because he's consistently been known to do that. But you see, Michael, about a midway point in his career, had a kind of a change or approach to his game and to everything he did, and began to focus more on the team. That's because he allowed his head coach to call the shots. He allowed his head coach to make the decisions. Now, the head coach had a plan that worked well to fit in Michael Jordan and the rest of the other 11 guys into that system to win. And so what you see there is that the star, the leader, the head of the pack didn't take the shot, didn't take it all, because a lot of times we expect the leaders to take the charge, to take the initiative, to take the fall, or to punch one in for the win. And sometimes it takes another person for the win. In organizations sometimes, or in the groups I've been, a lot of times we rely too heavy on the leader instead of doing our active part to help that person out, to help them accomplish the goals, and to kind of put a little pressure off them. Now you see, at that point in 97, Michael was about a few years from retiring, so at that point he kind of learned a lot more of what teamwork looked like, a lot more of, I don't have to take the shot to be the hero, because at the end of the day, I want to win and I want a championship. So perspective is pretty important, but at the same time, it's also for the other players or the other people on the team to, number one, accept the responsibilities, but also be able to contribute and come up big, because it's not always going to be the leader. And so right now we're going to talk about the 4 focus points of the presentation. And so they're going to be modeling collaborative behavior, ensuring the requisite skills. I couldn't pronounce it at first, so I have studied it and I can do a better job now. Supporting a sense of community, and here's the big one, so help me if I mess up, understanding role, clarity, and task ambiguity. So those are the 4 talking points. Thank you, I appreciate it. And in those 4 points, we're going to go into detail, a little information, and we're going to be able to kind of go into some question and answer forms. So we're going to go into 2 teams, and we're going to look at the questions, look at the information presented, and come up with some tangible ideas and solutions, because we're going to a Shark Tank mode. So did anybody ever see the show Shark Tank? Okay, wonderful. And so what we're going to do is we're going to separate into groups. We're going to read the questions, and we're going to answer them, and also come up with ways to help an organization of any sort engage their team members better, challenge and hold their peers more accountable. So without further ado, we're going to go into another break, and when we come back, we're going to split up into our groups and do our Shark Tank Forum. Thank you. All right, welcome back from break number 2. Pizza is really good. We still have some left, so help yourself to some. Now we're going to talk about the 4 focus points, and we're now going to our Shark Tank portion. Just like the show Shark Tank, we're going to get together, talk, and share ideas, and just get really critical. There will be no fist flying, no clothes ripping off, so we'll be doing good. So what I'm going to share right now is going to be the first 2 parts of the Shark Tank Forum, which will consist of the modeling collaborative behavior and ensuring the requisite skills. I'm going to read some information that I skimmed from the actual article, which will be helpful in the questions that you're going to ask as a group, and then from there, kind of get ideas for that action plan towards the end of the presentation. All right, starting at page 11, we're going to talk about modeling collaborative behavior. And so this is how it reads. Nonetheless, we found that the perceived behavior of senior executives plays a significant role in determining how cooperative teams are prepared to be. While the behavior of the executive team is crucial to supporting a culture of collaboration, the challenge is to make executives' behavior visible. So I'm going to ask now that you split up into your groups, get in one side of the room, and then discussion leaders, go ahead and take charge and ask those questions. I'll be bouncing back and forth. We do have 5 minutes on part 1, and then once that's done, we're actually going to go into part 2. So go ahead and split and have a good discussion.
Questions here. Based off the modeling collaborative behavior information, how can leaders and followers help their executives develop a healthy culture of collaboration?
Transparency.
Okay, the leaders being transparent?
Yeah.
Does anyone want to go first?
Okay, I'll write that down. Being transparent. You want to expand on that? Any add anything else?
That
I mean,
you need to
it just
have
kind of
someone's
feeds off of what
responsibility
you
to
just
some of the
said.
players,
If
and
you
you need to be
don't,
able to
everything
give them the
has starts from the
information
top
about
down.
how to
So
do
if
it.
your leaders
If
aren't
some
able
of
to
them
be
don't, and
transparent
if some of them don't
and
have the
get
talents
things
to
done in an honest
share
with each other,
knowledge and also
it doesn't
share
necessarily trickle
responsibility.
down to like a leader that affects your lower culture. We're just kind of going through this right now.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So it breaks your communication, appropriate and effective communication, especially important communication. Needs to flow. Build products to get done. This is not close out a company.
So you think it's important for the leaders and the followers to be communicating everything to the executives, or just
Some roles,
yeah.
it's natural. Just to have business like a parent and a kid. But if my parents, for the most part, upfront and transparent, even on the stuff that they don't tell us, it's not transparent, don't need to.
Transparency.
I can say to someone that I don't know because they're not there to be surprised.
Okay.
So it's hard to stay on board with a vision when the leadership
And where he was then,
has a hard
what was
time
the point beyond the video was
backing up what they've told you from the get-go
That
at the
and
bottom.
it showed
I see.
And then they get together and they're all
how the different players all, because
Yeah, that makes
pretty
sense.
much everybody on the court.
Mom said it's fine, but Dad said it's not fine.
Exactly.
So it was kind of to show.
I'm gonna go ask Mom now. Yeah. I know for me, I know working at Chick-fil-A, we could always something was you could be able to tell the mission and vision of the leadership by looking at the lowest. This sounds bad, but looking at the lowest like
Yes.
pupil or the new kind of the new guy in the window that you're ordering food from.
I think
If
so.
you can get a
I
glimpse
think he
of
does.
what Chick-fil-A's mission, overall mission is, which is to be the best fast food chicken serving restaurant in America.
I think some of it
If you
too,
can tell that
especially
mission,
if
that
you want to
vision,
develop,
to serve every customer, to go the
collaboration,
second mile service
provide an
with
environment
that
where
lowest person.
like
It sounds bad, lowest
family
person.
and
then that's a successful business because they've been able to convey everyone's on the same page with that vision and that mission.
There's
And you've seen that from everyone on board. And so there, like you said, there's no, I don't know if they wanted me to do that or if I should be doing this, because everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing. Because you're right, they know from the top what's coming out of the top. It's not like one day this thing, one day that.
I will tell you also, one of the things I found is perception of reality. Everyone's perception is their reality, regardless of whether that perception is real or
Action
not.
steps can both executive and
And if
non-executive
you are,
team
as an
members take
executive, if
together
you're a
to
leader,
model
and you are providing the guidance, then their perception of you will be such.
Yes.
But you have to continue on giving some type of feedback. You have to encourage, so they know.
The hard part
If
is
I
it's
say
always the
something,
face of a company, especially
and I
when
say,
you
"Grant,
start getting into public
now,
companies. And I'm
do
sure
you
there's
understand?
always
Oh, yeah,
someone
yeah. Well,
with the news, there's
what-
always somebody
you
from
kind
the
of
investors.
give it back to me what I said.
But if
Again,
you can-
their perception
if
may
can
be you want to
incorporate
be
other people in
to
that, or at
cook.
least give people credit
In your-
for
in your
specific
case,
things
cook.
they've done.
Chick-fil-A,
It's easy
100 of
to
them.
see.
Well, the reality
You know,
was
this
you
wasn't
only
team,
needed
this wasn't
50.
just me.
So I think an effective leader has to make everything visible. That person has to see that leader do things.
And some of
And
it
again,
too, I think,
that perception of that individual
You know, the hard part as a
Your
leader
employees.
is it's easy to
is
take
going to be the
credit for
reality from
success,
that
but
time
a lot of
forward.
times.
So you have to be
good
visible
leaders
in your
will
actions. Simply
give
saying
success to the
something
team that helped, but then
does
take
not
responsibility for
necessarily
when things went wrong.
provide.
So, if something went wrong,
Provide
I'm
what
a
that
fall
employee
guy,
needs.
but
They
if
need to
something
see you
goes
do
really
it.
well, it was my team.
So again, that encourages that perception to be more real. And that's one of the things that I believe that needs to happen.
Encouraging initiative.
I think you're right, because even when I was interning for Jim, I would see the videos that you guys did before I came on about outreach and reaching every constituent and the three ideals. I'm forgetting the other two.
Yeah.
But then when I would see you, or when I would see Gabe, or even Jim, interact with a constituent in the office, coming out to where I would sit and work, or just anywhere, that's when it became almost a real reality for me. Like you said, things I'd been told leading up to this became real in a sense, because I saw it at work from you guys, and that's, so that that perception is a reality.
And nothing against your generation, but, and this is not in
In
any,
executive case, you're saying,
in your generation, the millennials
Kind of give
If you
credit
have
where-
so much
yeah.
and then in the non-
technology.
non-executive,
So that means it's going to be even more difficult to be visible to that employee. Because
so we ended
I
up-
can be right here, but I'll text you, I want you to do something. Well, that takes away from the visible, the leadership. In our generation, we did way too much. We wanted to do everything. So there has to be a fair balance between
Okay, what's the third
being
question?
visible, but also using the technology that's been given you.
Oh, okay, that's it?
All right, well,
Do you want to go back to the first
you want me to
question?
go to the second question, or do you have something to say?
So, you want to add
Okay.
to the first one?
What action steps can both executive and non-executive team members take to together model collaborative
Something
behavior?
we're more Christian.
Kind of already touched a little bit on
Yeah.
It's
this.
the same importance.
There's part 2 and 3.
Like you went back to what you said with the communication. But then I love what Brian said about there's that balance between, because like, I mean, we can't just
Yes.
rely on, the non-executives can't just rely on everything they see the executives doing and model that, because there's more than just that needs to be present. So I think,
Values.
like you said, the balance of the communication
Maybe do you want to participate?
with technology
Oh, I gotta
versus
watch
what you see in reality.
Yeah,
It's something
you're
that I
live.
agree with, empowerment.
I was gonna
Leaders,
Say hello,
say,
Professor.
Hello.
technology can be there or not be
Get an
there.
A.
I don't think it has much to do with
A for
technology,
attitude.
because either way you're communicating, you have to communicate. I think it's the empowering part. And
Oh no, you didn't.
Got 1 minute before we
Knowing
wrap
that-
up.
if I don't empower you to do your job,
Yep.
then you're just not going to do it.
Right.
You're not going to succeed, you're not going to grow as an individual. It's a very difficult, again, generationally, it's a very difficult thing for my generation to empower people, because we were brought up, you had to do everything yourself. Your generation, empowers
There's a
everyone.
lot of-
If this
yeah,
cuts
a lot
out,
of-
then we can just roll again.
And communication, because I said it about communication, because communication can be verbal, non-verbal, physical, it can be technological. So do as you see me do, or don't do as you see me do. You know, or, so it can be everybody's watching everybody. You know, even if you're at your desk and don't think someone's watching. So
the company's also
it's learning the culture.
the hardest part is a lot of our clients are
cultures,
oil and
corporate
gas.
cultures,
So
office cultures.
they're not having
all of that
fun
is
right
a
now, but
communication.
it doesn't really
Trying to
affect
get
us
people
all.
who fit
So
into those
it's
cultures.
tough when
Or
you go to
sometimes
other
you try to
clients
get
and
somebody
it's
who
like,
can come in and break
not a good
that
quarter,
culture if it's not a culture that's how. So
accounting.
communication and
When I
just
graduated in
encompasses
2012
a
from
lot of
undergrad, and then my MBA
all of how you
a year ago.
speak to
So,
Good show.
what were you?
All right, we'll go ahead and gather up real quick.
You're a teacher.
A lot of great conversations, a lot of good information being shared. What we're going to do is we're gonna change it up a little bit from our break, and we'll go into the new approach to the questions. Great job, and I will see you right back. All right. Hey, the pizza's still pretty good, and we still have water, so we're doing pretty good. We're going to change things up a little bit because of time. The supporting a sense of community and the part 3 questions we're not going to tackle because a lot of the information there and the questions kind of weave into the other 4 points. So what we are going to do is go to ensuring the requisite skills, and then we're going into role clarity. Let me read to you ensuring requisite skills again. This information here comes from the actual article that I read, and it is referenced at the end of the presentation. Many of the factors that support collaboration relate to what we call the container of collaboration, which is the underlying culture and habits of the company or team. Our studies showed that a number of skills were crucial: appreciating others, being able to engage in a purposeful conversation, productively and creatively resolving conflict, and program management. Onto understanding role clarity. The common assumption is that carefully spelling out the approach is essential, but leaving out the roles of individuals within the team vague will encourage people to share ideas and contribute in multiple dimensions. Collaboration improves when the roles of individual team members are clearly defined and well understood, when the individuals feel that they can do a significant portion of their work independently. Without such clarity, team members are likely to waste too much energy negotiating roles or protecting turf rather than focus on the tasks. All right, we're going to break up into our groups. Part 2 and Part 4 questions are what we're focusing on, and I will actually keep a limitation on the time you have to share them. So if you go ahead and break up into your groups, and I will come rescue you at the very end. Oh. It's going to be page 17 and 18, which will be in the back. Page 17 and 18.
Page 17. Based on ensuring the requisite skills and information to one, improve the bad habits and customs of the team or company. You mean like just someone within the company or someone within the company?
Right. So, for example, we'll use the congressman's office for example. Let's say Brian wants to go to Mr. Sherman and say, "Hey, Mr. Sherman, we're a little too busy with our schedules with what I have to do, and you scheduled another meeting, or I don't like the way you're communicating through emails on off days. Can we talk about how we can fix that?" That's an example. That doesn't happen in real life, but just an example.
I think the short answer is yes.
Yeah, right. But it's a lot harder for subordinates sometimes to approach the executives and say, "Hey, here's my problem," because there's always the fear of, am I going to get fired? Am I going to get demoted? So we have to, what kind of ways, in a realistic world, right? How can we really encourage someone to encourage the change and spark?
Okay. Well, I think when I look at what you have from here, you have certain things like appreciating others. When you walk into someone's office to have a question or a new idea, you have to definitely come with that attitude because, like you said, our generation can sometimes feel like we are entitled to certain things. And so I'm not just speaking about people, non-executives in my generation, but I'm just saying, showing that we're appreciative of how things have always been done at the same time is very important when you're walking into, so-and-so's office with a new idea or with a question. We've always done it this way. Is there, if you don't show concern for how things have been done, that could definitely come across wrong and poorly. And like you said, you can get fired. So
Right.
I think that's
Now,
important.
a lot of labor laws now allow the employees to contact the hotline or number in case there's any concerns. But like, for example, where I work at US Beef, you can normally talk to your district manager and they can go to bat for you, whether it's with HR or the general manager. So that's what I'm talking about. Some companies get it, but how can I encourage you to go to your professors or your dean and address problems, even though you're afraid? But you got to do it. That's the thing. What can we do that's going to push them forward into being realistic about a solution?
Oh, man. What do you think, Micah?
She got an idea.
I'm still thinking.
Well, obviously, again, this goes back to the generational thing. Our generation is not a very open generation. And it's difficult. But you have to, a lot of things are just your body language, how you present yourself. You have to set boundaries, but realize those boundaries
I think one of the
are expandable.
hardest habits.
Because there are times when I am the boss, and unfortunately this is the way it has to go.
Sometimes
And there are times, depending on what you're doing, but hey, I need your input. So as a leader, you have to encourage, again, we go back to what we talked about, the communication aspect of it. If we are not communicating to our employees that they're open to come see us and open to come discuss with us,
if you're a leader,
then they never will. And they'll either quit,
the skills we're looking
get a better job, or a different job, not necessarily even a better job.
Right.
before they happen if you're hiring.
But I think that's one of the things we can do.
I mean, like
Appreciating others,
the Zappos when they first started.
that can come in a number of
and I mean,
things.
still do it, but they
Teachers have to show,
they
you have
also
so many
get
different
paid a
kids.
quitting bonus.
And quite frankly, you are a leader
3-4 weeks.
because
So
you
they've
have
gone through
30 to
orientation, kind of in
35
their job, but it's still
micro
early enough that they don't really have a lot
coddles,
of time.
and each one of those children, just like
They
your
offer a
employees,
bonus that's basically
are treated
like a
entirely
paycheck or
different. So
paycheck
you
and a
have
half.
to, one, you have to take time as a leader
To you today.
to know that person, know what
And so,
gets them
the idea is
excited.
people that take the
And
take the
in my
bonus
role,
are probably not people that we really want.
because I
long-term.
deal with so many
They're not gonna stick
different
around
types of
just
people.
for a paycheck.
I may go to the
So
most
that's kind of
conservative
their
people
way
in
of
the world,
actually
and then
making
1
sure
hour
they know
later
that
I'll be at the most
commitment.
liberal group there is. So you have to adapt your personality to some degree without losing who you are to the people that you're leading. You two probably, or you three of you are probably entirely different people, and are motivated entirely differently. You may be motivated by money. You may be motivated by just being present. You may be motivated by seeing your name in light. So we as leaders and teachers, it amazes me. They have to do that every single. They have to know every one of their kids and okay, what is going to get that child to read, especially children who are poor. What am I going to get? So you have to know that child. You have to be open and receptive. I think the key to one, communication, two, knowing, getting to know the people that you work with.
I'm trying to get that. I'm sorry. It's in my
Right.
relationships are really big because I also think.
We'll go to part 4 questions, finish your conversations. We'll go to the part 4s.
My principal is
No,
really
we'll
good
skip
about
that.
supporting
He said
researchers
he wants to go.
and
So
like we have
some rules are
collaboration
new
weekly
and
with
can take a process to understand
administration
how they work and
and
function.
all of our
What
like
practices
specialist
would you
teachers and
guys
stuff.
leaders
And
working
so
with someone
because of
with
that,
these
even though
that are not
sometimes
clear
like
are
I
still
might be a little bit intimidated just because she is my boss to like say things that.
Here's an example. I work for a
something
local
because
construction
we have
company
a
in town.
relationship, like,
They hired me
I
on
would
for a
do
role.
it,
They had a
and like,
specific
if I get
focus
turned
and
down, like,
purpose.
it's okay.
They just
Like,
told me,
I
here's
should
what you're
support
going to
you
do.
regardless,
Okay, great.
but
And how
I
do I
just
go
need to
about
express
that?
how I'm feeling,
Well,
that I agree or disagree.
start researching, start
And-
looking things up.
but because
So
of
what
that
I did was, as I
atmosphere
was
that she gives the teachers,
days going
like,
into
we
the
can
office, I would have to
easily,
create my roles. I would have to find things to do.
do that
I would
same
have
thing
to
in
find
other
reason and
places.
purpose to
Because we
justify
have
me leaving the office. So
So-
in nonprofit groups, or like for example, Dan and I are part of a group at ORU. It's very new what we're doing. So we're having to figure that out as we go along. So the big thing is patience, right? Patience would probably be the one thing. And number 2 is giving that person time and kind of coming alongside of them and working with them. Because that's the big thing a lot of times. Here you have a job, you have a pay, but sometimes you may not have it. We don't know what you're all going to do, but you need to go create it, right? So how do you work with individuals that get hired on that may not really know what's going on, or in a group, whether it's a nonprofit, and you're raising money for something, how do you encourage someone to do their role, whether that's sending emails out or whether that's go getting the money. So it's kind of, that's what the question is gearing towards, because those situations do happen more times than not. How do you handle that? What are some good practices you guys think to help someone in that situation? As the leader, and well, it's more the leader than the actual person, because the actual person is there. So they're just kind of waiting for the leader to kind of give them direction and guidance. And sometimes it's like getting a donkey to walk, and then sometimes it's people that are go-getters, but you gotta give them a little direction so that they don't veer off.
I think interaction with them will be a good, like a good start. Because not only as an employee, you see your, your boss or whoever's too far from your business. So
We got 30 seconds.
And attach them to what's the purpose of that.
That's good. All right, we're going to wrap it up here, and we're going to bring it back together. One quick thing before we go into the last segment, which is the plan. I will actually read the last question in part 4, and then read something from the PowerPoint to kind of help us collaborate and put an action plan together. So we are going into our second to last break, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back again, and the pizza is still here, so we are doing pretty good. What we're going to do now is I'm going to read to you something before we go into our action plan part. We call this the Effective Collaboration Review. We've had some really great discussions. We've been able to share some information, learn a lot about each other. We have all generations covered here as well, in all age groups, so that's wonderful. That's a big plus. And God bless you to the guy in the back for sneezing. So I'm going to read one more piece of information, and I'm going to cap it off with a question, and then we're going to get to work. Okay, that was the lecture. Okay, strengthening your organization's capacity for collaboration requires a combination of long-term investments in building relationships and trust, in developing a culture in which senior leaders are role models of cooperation, big emphasis point, cooperation, and smart near-term decisions about the ways teams are formed, roles are identified, and challenges and tasks are articulated. And that kind of really sums up in a way all the 4 points. Now, the article had 8 points, but the truth is most nonprofits don't have an HR department. The leader is the HR department. And so I kind of consolidated it down to connect with mostly everyone, whether you're working for a government agency, a school, an accounting firm, your dad's company, or working to make delicious food, information that's going to connect to everyone. So the last question I'm going to read to kind of get us started in the brainstorming part of this exercise, where we're going to come up with an action plan, is the second question in part 4. How can leaders create accountability with their team leads and members to ensure their commitment to the cause without providing an incentive or financial compensation? Sometimes I've been guilty of giving away free stuff or giving away something to encourage people to work. The truth of the matter is, if you have to go to that point to get people to do stuff, that's probably not good. And the long-term effect of it is it's going to take a lot of work to get that person to work. So just like our parents raised us with good values and foundations at the beginning, so that down the road when we face problems, we don't resort to things like if we were young. The same thing it is with an organization or in a group setting is, how can we create that responsibility, instill that commitment to being all in and not being motivated by exterior things to get things done. And so a quick example before we break in, the fun thing about YBT is that I love social media. I like to get on there. I thought I'd get a lot more laughs because mostly everybody knows I have a thing for social media. But it's been a great opportunity to help a good cause, tell their story through various social media outlets, and being able to implement ideas and concepts that maybe a business I interviewed for didn't give me the opportunity that I could have had. And so to it's very entrepreneurial, it's very new, very different. And so the opportunity to just grow and learn and do things, to make things better, because all of us have a drive to do things better and prove people wrong and do the unexpected. And so YBT has been that opportunity. So you're not always going to get people like that, but if you get people to buy into what you're doing and get them committed, then we're in a win-win situation, and we don't have to do crowd control down the road if something goes unexpected and now you got to clean it up. So we'll go ahead and brainstorm here for a few minutes. So we'll have Grant and Daniel kind of head up the discussion. So let's about 5 to 10 practices to encourage effective collaboration, hold leaders accountable, and develop a culture, develop a community where there's trust, respect, and appreciation and acknowledgement of the other person's efforts and commitments. So we'll go ahead and drop it up to you guys.
I can go ahead and start. I know for me, just something that came to mind instantly was the importance of allowing each team member to grasp not only the vision or mission of the business or company, but to find out their vision and their mission, their specific role in the greater purpose. Humans like to be a part of a greater mission, a greater purpose. So if you simply tell them, for instance, I worked at Chick-fil-A for 3.5 years. We want to go the extra mile for every single customer that walks in the door or comes in the drive-thru. What does that look like for the new team member who's 16 years old and this is their first job and this second week? What does that look like for them? How are you going to convince them with necessarily that vision that I just shared? So the important thing, I think, is getting them to understand their role and their place in the bigger picture, because if I can grasp onto what I'm supposed to be doing and my mission that I'm always trying to get to and reach, then I can do my job most effectively, and I can even think of ways in which I can make this vision become a reality for myself and for those around me. And so I think that's very important, is making sure that everyone is not only on the same page as far as what the main vision and mission of the company is, but what is your role, Ernesto? Where are you fitting into this place? All right, you're a team member out front. You're just taking orders. Well, let's find a way to get you to do the best you can for those 5 hours that you work that day. Let's give you a mission or a vision to where you can excel and thrive in that mission. And so I think when you have a team where everyone knows their role, knows their part in the bigger picture, then that can be where effectiveness thrives. And I think that's where you can see the role I was sharing with my group earlier. That's where you can see the mission and the vision of a business at their lowest outlets, in the new people, just even in the people that interact with customers the most. So you're not going to see the owner of the Chick-fil-A at the counter serving people. He might be managing how the store is looking during the rush hour, but he's not going to be doing the money and all that stuff. So seeing how the person in the window, how they're going about what they're doing. It's not about what they're doing, it's about why they're doing it.
Right.
And if you can see the why of what they're doing, then you can understand, all right, that's what Chick-fil-A is all about. And I know I share a lot about Chick-fil-A because I work there, but that's what I saw in working there, is if you can show people the why, then they can understand their role to play, and they can show what Chick-fil-A is all about.
So the first one in the action plan is show people the why.
I think that's
right.
important, yeah.
And then showing people the why would mean defining their roles and duties and providing them an outlet for help, such as the shift manager, such as the manager on duty, such as the operator. Yeah. That's a good one. Now you mentioned a lot of things in there, so I'm going to consolidate it. So we asked the why. And the second part would be open communication with leaders. So during the shift, leadership should check up on their crew, ask them questions, see how they're doing. That way, that in the sense, because not all situations are you working fast food, but just in general, in a corporate setting or a setting where there's more business going on and not so much taking care of someone right away, leaders don't always have to check up on you every time, but kind of a bi-weekly check-in, or once a day, how are you doing?
Yeah.
is kind of an example of that. Anybody else?
I think to that, and clarity is important.
Clarity, absolutely.
Because your roles have to know. They can't be ambiguous. You can't say, well, I'd like you to cook a hamburger.
Yeah.
Or I'd like you to teach a student. Well, if you don't really understand what that role is. And you can do that in a number of ways. One, communication, but two, when you are asking questions, and I do believe you need to ask questions, they can't be yes or no questions. You have to, as a leader, your job is to pull out of that employee or that coworker what's going on. So you have to open-ended questions, and in doing so, communications, we often hear communication is talk. Well, really, communication's listening. You have to be able to listen to that employee, hear what they have to say, and regurgitating what they said so that you're not misinterpreting.
Absolutely. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to pause the camera real quick and come back and finish up because we have 3 good points and we're going to try to get to about 8 to 10. And so we're going to pause the camera and we're going to come back and hopefully the pizza will be gone. If not, then that's what it is. All right, we'll be right back. All right, so on the point of communication, as we shared during the break, it's a word that's overused, it's overemphasized, but what does communication really look like in a situation where there's a conflict and it has to be resolved? The experiences that I've had with it, there's both sides come together in a calm state, talk about the issue, they don't get upset, they don't get emotional, they kind of talk it out and come to a solution. It's both sides that have to be willing to be able to come to an agreement and work in differences. So we have clarity. And the other part I would go on to say is transparency. Micah mentioned that earlier in one of the talks. Transparency is going to look like the leader is going to talk through what they're doing, what they've done. And when it comes to changing the minds of people on why we should go a different direction, they should share personal experience and also an experience of someone else to kind of paint the perspective and the picture. Hey, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and this is why I'm proposing this. So we have 4 action steps, and we're going to go with the 5th one so that we can jump to the survey because of time. The 5th one would be not going to be communications. We already talked about it. So what I'm going to do is, if anybody has anything they want to share or add before I kind of close it. Grant, Daniel, Ernesto?
You want us to kind of go over some of the answers we had earlier?
Well, we can go over some of the answers. That may help a little bit, too.
Well, we talked about... Well, Brian had a good point. He brought up how a leader's perception is reality. And so I think this goes a lot toward the communication, toward the transparency aspect, because, you know, in a business, the executives might have a way of seeing things, but if that's not the way that the lower downs see it, then there's going to be, you know, in a sense, 2 different kinds of reality, maybe 2 different kinds of expectations and goals, and so ensuring that those non-executives know where we're going and what is the perception of who we want to be. I think that's important. We talked about empowering the non-executives as well, and ensuring, because we can, you know, the leaders can just speak all they want and try to do things in front of the non-executives all they want. But if I don't empower you, if I don't empower you to do your job, you're not going to do your job.
Right.
And so I think that's another thing that we touched on as well. Setting boundaries that can be expounded about, you know, what you're supposed to be doing. This is the expectation, but it can kind of fluctuate. You know,
right.
It's not set in stone. And I think lastly, we touched on putting aside our egos because there's generational gaps. I know Micah was bringing this up, and it's a good point because we need to seek to understand each other in that sense. When I walk into someone's office who might be a part of a different generation than myself, then putting aside my ego when I approach that person and making sure that there's that approachability factor. You know, if I know that I can't really approach so and so, that's going to affect whether or not I even speak to that person and whether I have ideas
Right.
to contribute or a problem that might come up. And then I get an assignment from that person, it's unclear what I'm really supposed to be doing because I'm kind of afraid to approach that person.
Right.
So I think putting aside our egos is very important, whether it's from Generation X or my generation, because we have to come to that. We have to understand each other, and we have to understand that we are driven by different things. So, Brian mentioned this is very important. I might be driven by hearing my name in lights, where someone else might be driven by money. And so, putting aside those things and coming to that common understanding of why we're doing this, now let's be effective in doing
Right.
it.
So encouragement would be the fifth one. And then number 6 is drawing boundaries, which would basically be laying out the map of how far can you go in what you say and express yourself. And I've learned that you may know people higher up than you, but it doesn't mean, hey, let's have a conversation. I can go to you for something. You got to go through the proper channels of doing so. And sometimes when there's like a superior above your director and there's a communication there, sometimes that superior still wants to see the process go to that person then to them. And I can speak because I've learned that recently. So we have the action steps. So what we're going to do now is,
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't hear anybody talking about honesty and trustworthiness and integrity with one another. Because all I hear is, well, that's business. It's like, when did business not become trust, honesty, respect, and with integrity and ethics? Where did those go in today's business?
That's a good one, Grant. And write that down. Honesty, integrity, and ethics. That is very true. And even in those things, in certain companies and in the structure, some of them, leaders hide under those thinking they're acting in
Right.
character and integrity and truth, but they're not.
They're not.
They may be doing the honesty part, but they're not acting in integrity and character. That's a very good point.
One of the other things they do, and I've seen this, they say they're being honest because I have families that have to be fed. So I got to make sure my employees are fed. So I'm going to be honest to them. I may not be honest to my customer.
Yeah.
It's so prevalent.
It's really bad these days. It's really bad.
I won't even mention the government. But anyway, but I have seen that in business before and been on the not so good end of it. And it does hurt, but it does take some time to recover. So with that said, we're going to go into the surveys. And then once we do the surveys, we're going to pretty much wrap it up. And so we'll give you a few minutes to touch on the surveys. And we'll be right back. All right, well, this wraps it up today for effective collaboration. Thank you so much. Please hand your surveys to the front of the table, which will be my direction. Thank you so much for your time. And guess what? There's still pizza here. So for those at home who want some, come on by. We'll have it here for you. Thank you so much for your time. And hopefully with the group sessions and the information presented, we have a better awareness of what effective collaboration looks like. In other words, healthy collaboration, not so much collaboration where I have to work with you or I have to do this in a group, where we learn how to engage others, whether we are in the position to direct others or we're in the position to receive direction from others, that we have a better understanding of approach to how to resolve conflict and problems. Thank you again so much. Thank you, Roseanne, for coming all the way from South Africa to visit. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right. Thank you so much. You have a good day.